Okay, let's just check that we are on and that we are live. LinkedIn says we're starting soon, so I'm assuming that's going to be rolling through in just a second. Join. Okay, we are live. Perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. This is the final webinar in the Fired Up, Not Burnt Out series, sponsored by Planday. This series focuses on the human cost of burnout and what hospitality businesses can do to prevent it. We conducted a survey with Planday earlier in this year, and the data and the statistics showed that 76% of managers and 85% of shift workers report experiencing burnout or poor mental health at work. 69% of shift workers say that they regularly feel exhausted. 47% are unhappy with their work-life balance, and only 24% feel truly valued by their leadership. Now, for those working in all areas of hospitality, these are quite startling statistics, and the Planday's Managers Toolkit responds directly to these challenges. I am joined this morning by three incredible guests. So Kathryn Wright, who's the Manager of Customer Experience at Planday, who works directly with hospitality businesses across the UK, and Emma Sanchez, who is the People Manager at Vagabond Wines, who brings over 22 years of hospitality experience across Europe and now supports people development and well-being in one of the UK's most people-focused wine bar brands. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Very welcome. Thank you for joining. Otherwise, it would just be me talking. So, are you both well this morning? Feeling hopefully not burnt out, right?
Feeling very well, thank you. Not too burnt out.
Good. Today, we are diving into one of the most urgent topics, one of the topics that, irrespective of where you are within the hospitality ecosystem, is quite a prominent topic. We're talking specifically about how do we identify burnout and how do we start to tackle it before it stops us. And I think this is something that within the Burnt Chef project, we see from supply chain, we see from tech companies, we see from front of house, back of house, operational teams. So it's a really poignant subject matter. Kathryn, we'll start with you. So from your experience working with managers across the sector, what would you say are some of the early warning signs that someone might be approaching burnout?
Yeah, I think some of them, they're probably fairly obvious, like fatigue, low energy, but repeated, everyone has an off day, but seeing that kind of energy drop maybe over time or in comparison to normal energy levels are definitely telltale signs. I was talking with a customer recently who mentioned about physical appearance and was saying, I don't really know, can you say that? And I said, I think it's, sleep deprivation will make you look pretty tired. Maybe don't go up to them and say, hey, I've noticed your physical appearance, but it's going to have an impact. Someone's going to look tired, maybe a bit worn down. Some of the signs I'd say are maybe less obvious. Saying yes to every single shift could actually be a sign of burnout. It may be a manager's kind of very happy place that they've got this employee they can depend on, but actually it can be a sign of kind of masking, it's perfectionism, people pleasing, and it's probably a good idea to check in that employee is actually comfortable saying no and that they're happy to speak up if they aren't happy taking on a shift.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting point, isn't it? Is often when you think about burnout, you think of people who are going to be tired, maybe they're not performing as well. But actually, I think that what we've and research with universities that we've worked with shows that we're very good at emotionally masking. So in hospitality, we put on this mask, we say yes to everything, we don't like to let everyone down, and then I think the comment that really stands out for me is, I'm fine, I've just got to make sure everyone else is okay, or I can keep going, I thrive on this sort of stress or this adrenaline, which when we take back psychological or biological behaviors. Could you imagine a caveman running away from a woolly mammoth for 5 days straight? It wouldn't happen. There's no such thing as thriving on stress. So it's a really, really important flag, that one. Emma, as someone leading people directly in the industry, what signs do you look for in your team? You have over 100 people within the workforce. So what sort of signs do you look for, and how do you differentiate between them having sort of a tough week or a tough day and something more serious or more sustained building up?
Well, I would say there is an obvious change of attitude. They would become quieter or stop sharing stories or joining conversations with the rest of the team. Something I am obsessed with that I would pay attention to is if they start avoiding eye contact, or, as we know, dragging their feet. Some people get so wrapped up in the feeling that they need me that they won't take time off, and they will prioritize work over rest or personal life. So we would see those feeling responsible for the shift showing up as a presentism, and those who are just not caring or even feeling unheard, just absenteeism, calling 10 minutes before the shift and saying, I'm not going to make it today. We know very well it's happening very often. So when does it move beyond just having a tough week? Is probably when those signs don't fade over time, but they stick for weeks or even months. And when usual things like having a chat and asking hey, what's wrong? You don't see the same. And maybe providing some time off or a fresh routine is really don't helping. So I would say those are the signs when it start to look more like a burnout.
Yeah, and I promised you both that I wouldn't go off piste, but you mentioned presenteeism, which is really the unseen danger, I think, especially in high-paced environments. Are there any things that maybe you've experienced within your time in hospitality or working within the people and culture that you've learned to identify with presenteeism? Because it's an unseen danger, right? Often enough, people are there, and for all intents and purposes, they're present. So how do you look out for those presenteeism signs?
Well, you would see that they are just tired. If you know them well enough, you would see they have lost their spark. They seem indifferent and withdrawn, and they can't bounce back anymore to the usual things that normally matters to them in the job. And you can see they are about to not care anymore. It's important to reach to that point and help them to enjoy the job again. Otherwise, we might risk to lose them.
Yeah, and it does exacerbate turnover massively. I think when you look at Deloitte studies year on year, presenteeism is costing the economy more and more and more every single year. And I think when we talk about burnout and presenteeism, the two are quite synonymous, because you don't just wake up one morning and go, oh, I have burnout. It's a gradual process that continues to grow. And so often you're at work for that entire period. Obviously, hospitality is quite a unique environment. It's dynamic, it's people facing, it can be relentless at times as well. The research that we've done with Planday shows that 69% of shift workers regularly feel exhausted, and about 47% are unhappy with their work-life balance. So, Kathryn, what systemic issues do you think contribute most to burnout within hospitality teams?
I think a big part of it is the lack of control with your shift. So we saw in the research that we've done together that not knowing your shifts in advance can actually cause a lot of stress. People want to be able to plan their lives, plan things like childcare, plan what money they have. So that in itself is a big part of it. I think the other side is actually the actual work itself. So all the things that make hospitality a really great place to work. It's dynamic, it's fast paced, there's constant change. Can, if you're already coming in a bit stressed because of all these last minute changes can just tip you over the edge, perhaps. So suddenly you're not enjoying that dynamic, fast pace, and it's actually a source of stress because it can be very physical, it can be very loud. So it's about managing that balance, I would say.
Yeah, knowing when your next period of time off is as well, to be able to make sure you're getting that rest, right?
Yeah, that would make a difference, sure.
And Emma, you've worked in Spain, Italy, Denmark, UK. Have I missed any?
No, that's all.
It's impressive. I mean, how have you seen?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have you seen burnout? So with our work, we've seen a lot of different culture, and I think that hospitality, we've actually seen quite positively, hospitality starts to set a new wave that tackles cultural norms. How have you seen the subject of burnout and mental health differ across different cultures and different countries?
Kris, that is a really good question, and it's a bit difficult for me to answer, to be honest. There are definitely cultural differences, and where Italy and Spain have similarities. What I experienced in Spain was back in the days, I was a student, just doing some of the job during the weekends for the fun and the extra cash. Then in Italy was a fine dining, completely opposite to me. I am not that, hated it. Then in Copenhagen, I experienced a formal casual dining, I would call. There were very high expectations, and it was really hard for me because I was constantly pushed outside my comfort zone. So I've found it with new challenges every day. It was incredible. It was really hard. What I have seen in common, though, in all those countries is the culture of very high expectations with very little reward. And fear was constantly mistaken for respect. But this was back then. I think hospitality has changed since then, I hope. But obviously now I am back to the UK, casual dining, very relaxed. I have known now a different type of leadership, what I think is the right leadership style. While I feel very proud of everything I achieved, learned, and the growth that gave me after that time, it's still an experience that I going back now to the UK. What I have seen here is an incredible opportunity to grow very quickly, but there is also a huge competition and a lot of pressure to always over-deliver. And for someone who is very ambitious and could give the 1,000% of themselves with real passion, have a cost. It has a shelf life and it costs a lot of personal energy. So answer to your question, I would say, burnout shows up differently depending on the country, the dining style, and even the moment in time.
Yeah.
But the root causes are pretty much the same everywhere. The high pressure, long hours, lack of recovery.
Yeah.
I got lost a little bit there.
No, I think it was perfectly valuable. It was a great point. And you explained it very well. I think you're completely right. I do from our experience, I do see that the pace of progression within the UK is often a lot quicker than other countries, which I think can be beneficial for career, but can also add to the risk of chronic stress and illness and burnout, because you don't necessarily have the experience or the skills to be able to cope with the pressures those roles will put in front of you, which is why we're really keen on longer term education and mentoring. But Kathryn, again, I'm sorry to do this to you because I promised I wouldn't, but I did try my best. The one thing that we all have in common is we've all spent time in Copenhagen and Denmark. And I'm just curious, from your personal experience, how do you see any differences between hospitality in Denmark compared to hospitality in the UK, and how businesses operate, or the conversations around mental health or burnout at all?
I think I'd agree with Emma that I think it is universal. I think the root cause is the same. There's perhaps some differences, maybe not even cross country. It's maybe more the nature of the business, formal dining versus a more casual pub. I wouldn't say I've noticed a really pronounced Denmark versus UK, but I have noticed casual pub cafe versus, Michelin star kind of restaurant, and the different pressures in those environments. But I think it all boils back to the same root causes, really, which is the environment, the not knowing in advance when you're working, that makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, agreed. So continuing with yourself, Kathryn, what do we do about it? I mean, Planday's Managers Toolkit gives managers practical tools to reduce stress, plan more fairly, and support better mental health at work. But what are the standout features or tactics that the toolkit can deliver to make a real impact?
I think one thing that's talked about in the toolkit quite a lot is communication. So just really keeping those lines of communication open. And that can be through tech and having easy ways to message and notify about shift changes. But it's also just conversation. Have one-to-ones with your team, ask them how they are, check in. Saying I'm fine isn't really an answer. So maybe find a system that works. I think a customer recently told me they have a 1 to 5 sort of how's your energy 1 to 5, which at first everyone thought it was a bit sort of awkward and uncomfortable, but it's just become really normalized now and is actually quite helpful. It can be a proper conversation, or it can be an on the fly how's your energy, but a good way to actually just get a pulse check. The other standout thing from the toolkit is probably about using tech. I just can't imagine how hard it must be for someone trying to manage a schedule these days in pen and paper and in Excel. So I think empowering managers to just have less admin load and being able to let employees say when they're available or express preferences for availability and check shifts easily and know in advance reduces a lot of the stress, so people can at least go into the workplace a bit calmer, perhaps.
A bit more prepared as well, right? It's a complete change of working style for those who've perhaps not used technology to its best advantage when it comes down to this sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And Emma, how do you apply this kind of thinking at Vagabond? What's your version of prevention, and what practices help your team stay energized rather than exhausted?
So as you well said at the beginning, at Vagabond, we have people. It's the most important thing to us. And then we have our concept, which we think is really cool. So what we have built is an environment that is open for learning. It is normal to say we don't know everything. And to create that sense of we are all on this together. And so everyone feels that they belong. There is a real passion among our people on what we do and how we do it. So it's a place where I think they can truly be themselves. Other things we do is to encourage our managers to celebrate with them, stay close, have empathetic conversations with them. We have all managers in the company have been trained to do you know Radical Candor? Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So we all have been trained to take this radically candid approach to tough situations. So those conversations stay open and human, but still honest and clear. And then we have, of course, all other practical things. Monthly reviews during probation. We have quarterly appraisals to keep the dialogue going. We have what we call the future head sessions, where team representatives bring feedback from the venues to us in central support. We do internal celebrations for anything that matters to them, their birthdays, their anniversaries, someone getting married, someone releasing a new music album. We have updated our benefits package. So we have included different prices, extra cash, so we can recognize their efforts. And the most important one, our health provider, is a complete tool that offers physical, mental, and financial well-being. So packing all that together, the culture, the open conversations, the recognition, the well-being support, I think all of that helps keeping the team energized, motivated, and most importantly, connected.
Yeah, it's about meeting the team where they are and understanding they're individuals, right? We're not talking about numbers here. I mean, from a business perspective, you know, you look at your forecasting for the course of the year and all you're doing is looking at numbers and figures, but actually what we're talking about is the subtle nuances of human life.
Exactly.
It's exactly what you've managed to tackle with the processes you put in place. So nicely done.
Thank you.
One of the things that you mentioned, which is about, you know, team morale and looking out for each other. One of the things that we hear quite frequently is that people don't say anything about potential burnout or health issues or concerns because they don't want to let the team down. And so I'm curious, really, from Kathryn, we'll start with you. How can leaders shift that culture to make it clear that asking for help isn't weakness? It's personal self-care and it's hygiene. So how can leaders have a role in changing that?
Yeah, I think it's really sad that anyone in any industry thinks that, you know, asking for help or saying I'm a bit burnt out is a sign of weakness, but it is sadly the reality. But I think a reason it's perhaps slightly exacerbated in hospitality, as well as it's, you know, fast paced, everyone's busy, is maybe the high turnover. So, you know, you don't necessarily know your team that well if there's been lots of people coming and going. So I think leaders need to take the lead there in trying to create a psychologically safe space, really normalize talking about mental health and being vulnerable. So it doesn't matter if you don't know the people you're working with that well, they're brand new. It's just very much the norm in the workplace to be open about how you feel, and, you know, encouraging taking breaks, not you know, celebrating people who've worked through and not taking a break. You know, that's not the right culture to create. We have some customers who get their teams to punch in and out of breaks, not as sometimes it's a cost thing, but you know, paid breaks just to check that they are having them. And of course, sometimes you'll miss one and everyone's busy, but you can see then if there's any patterns. So I think that's a big part of it, and just modeling it yourself as well, being open to having those conversations, being a bit vulnerable. And probably sending your managers on some training if it's not an area they've worked with before, talking openly about mental health.
Yeah. I mean, there's power in vulnerability and empathy. I think Brené Brown does a very fantastic short video about empathy and how it's different from sympathy. But from a manager's perspective, from a leader's perspective, to provide empathy, you have to be vulnerable and you have to tap into that emotion and to that feeling without necessarily disclosing your issues or what it is that's driving that. And yeah, sometimes that does require a little bit of training because it's a new skill. Emma, how do you work? You mentioned radical candor being one of the areas. So how do you personally foster an environment where your team feels safe to say that I think I'm struggling here and I need some help?
It is part of our culture in Vagabond. We don't have an office. The central support are the real definition of a vagabonder, what we want that to be meant. We move around constantly the venues. We don't need an office because we didn't ever use it. We are around. We make ourselves available, open for a conversation. Very often, too often, all the time, we make jokes to relieve some tension. Personally, what I do is I'll model it myself. I'll openly say I am having a tough week, or if something is waiting on me. I think it shows that that it's okay not to be perfect, and being vulnerable doesn't undermine you professionally. It actually builds trust. I would ask for a real "How are you?" A technique I used to use is to make a longer pause after asking, so they feel they need to give you a hopefully honest answer. I will follow up on anything. If they hint they are struggling or anything, I'll follow up later again. Make sure I always make sure they receive a response or I'm present, so they understand it's a genuine interest. I have been nominated the chief hugger of the company.
What a
I
role.
apparently I apparently dished out over 6,000 hugs only last year over the core estate. So I want to believe that is helping everyone to feel a bit happier and with a higher level of oxytocin. So I what I mean is they know I am here whatever they need me. So it's just about that. It's just about having that relaxed chat saying, look, I'm not okay. And we're here.
Thank you. I'd love to. We should have invited the person who was counting the number of hugs.
I was going to say, who's counting? Yeah, it's amazing.
That was my boss, of course.
Wow. It'd be interesting to see a tally of who's broken down and having the most hugs, just to see if there was, maybe there's a well-being metric there that we can look at. It sounds great. I really like the point that you mentioned about pausing as well after asking.
Thank you.
It's such a missed opportunity because, again, it's uncomfortable, right? That vulnerability, being able to ask someone, how are you?
Yeah.
And then
I think, at least in my generation, it's much more difficult to admit there is a problem or that to say that we are struggling. For newer generation, I'm sure it has changed.
Yeah.
And they are more able to say, look, not today.
Yeah.
But for us, for me at least, I think we need to do a double effort.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a cultural change, it's a generational change, it's a professional change as well. But I think both of you have said it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a showing that you're human. And if there's anything at the moment we need in this world is to realize that we are just human beings and we're sharing this hunk of rock together. And the more that you can connect with people, the better that people are going to feel, and hopefully the better businesses are going to run as well. Okay, so if someone is watching this today and either feeling close to burnout themselves or managing someone who is, what one piece of advice would you give to them? Kathryn, we'll start with you.
Sorry, I got distracted by your cute doggy in the background there.
We have a plumber in the building as well, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got a plumber and we've got two plumbers.
So I think for managers trying to manage burnout for their team, the advice would be around using tech to just make things controlled as much as they can be, make things predictable, just make everyone's life easier. In terms of if you're the employee or the manager, I guess, feeling close to burnout, I think it's just taking a moment to stop. I know I did used to work in hospitality as well a long time ago, and I know what it's like, the busy shit. It just feels like there's no time and you're in this kind of busy spiral. But even just a 5-minute break to step away and make that break meaningful to you. Because when I took breaks, I was probably feeling, in hindsight, a bit of social burnout, because much as I love customers and guests, I was probably a bit needed to step away. But then I'd have a break outside chatting to the chefs or whatever. So take a break that, if that re-energizes you, great, go and chat to a colleague. My break now would probably be sitting in a room with my big headphones with white noise on, closing my eyes, sort of with a leave me alone vibe. So whatever the break is for you to energize. And if you really recognize that this is a pattern or spiraling a bit, talk to your manager and try and take a day off or take some time off if that's what you need to do as well.
I think, so again, a lovely point. That social burnout, like just because you're on break, if you're working front of house or even back of house, sometimes you just need that time in your own space. Maybe that's doing like a bit of headspace calming or mindfulness or something, just to decompress and just let everything start to, all of that adrenaline start to drop a little bit, because social situations, they hype you up. Your heart rate increases, your breathing starts to become more shallow. So sometimes you do just need that peace and quiet. So really, really lovely point. Thank you. And Emma, what about yourself? So, if someone is feeling close to burnout themselves or managing someone who is, what would you say to them?
What I think is, and this will be more like a piece of prevention, and something that always helped me in every different job I have had, is to find your partner in crime at work. That co-worker that matches your morale and your working style, and with a quick look during a busy shift would get everything that you're feeling and thinking. Someone you can complain to and with about work.
Yeah.
But deep down, you both know you absolutely love it. And I think that bond gives you the energy to keep going, and creates the safe space to speak up when things get too much. And if you are struggling, they are often going to be the first one to spot it and get you and help you getting the right help. But if you are managing someone who is close to burnout, I would offer reassurance, proper time off, with real disconnection.
Yeah.
I would offer a hug, if possible. Be honest and realistic with them by saying, look, this is not going to work, and it's not doing any good to you. So maybe reminding them that asking for help won't get them judged or look weak. It's just a good point to start working together in creating some sustainability, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, there's a lot of points, really, really valuable points that have been raised on this, that if anyone who's listening to this, obviously as it goes out as a podcast, or anyone who's listening to this or watching this currently, there's so much. And there are so many different ways of being able to monitor not just your own performance and how you're feeling, but also monitor others. And whether that is looking at how much time someone's had off, how far in advance they're getting their rotas, whether or not they've had a break recently and actually decompressed, whether they're turning up early, whether they're turning up late. These are all metrics that you can measure, but also from a personal point of view as well. How is that person feeling? How is their energy feeling? And that's quite a out there type thing. Not everyone can necessarily feel what other people are feeling, but if you are able to be vulnerable with yourself and connect with yourself, it often allows you the ability to be able to feel how someone else is feeling, and your gut instinct will tell you more than sometimes paper or metrics will tell you. And it's okay to ask those questions and say, how are you? And if someone says, yeah, I'm fine, you'd be like, are you really? Are you really? And if you want to talk about it, even if you just want to swear or whatever it might be, I'm here. Or we phone up Emma, she's Vagabond, Wright, and she becomes chief hugger of the world. And that's the problem helped. So it's been a really interesting conversation. I've absolutely loved it, full of poignant facts. I wanted to sincerely thank both Kathryn and Emma for today's conversation.
Please, thank you.
I promised I wouldn't go off script, and I did, and you both absolutely nailed it. So thank you.
So thank you so much.
We do have a comment that has just dropped in from Matt Lochry, who is one of our team members, actually, a fantastic individual who I love dearly. He says, burnout and resulting absence is also exacerbated in our industry, as aside from letting our colleagues down, there is also the resulting impact on guest experience, which isn't always as immediate in other sectors, which I think is a brilliant tool. Remember, guys, burnout isn't just about long hours. It's not about being seen, not feeling in control, and not being supported. The research shows burnout is everywhere, but it doesn't have to be inevitable. We can build systems that protect both our people and ourselves. We can use tools like Planday's Manager's Toolkit to plan smarter, communicate better, and keep well-being at the heart of everything that we do. And we also have tools such as our global therapy, mindfulness, and life coaching service, which is now available in over 100 countries. So you're not alone. Reach out, use the resources, listen to this again on repeat, and also if you need the more clinical support, then we're here. We've got you. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you to my incredible guests, Emma, Kathryn. Nailed it. Great work, guys.
Thank you, Kris. Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you. Take care.